Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. And this year in Cryptoland, this series aims to introduce those early stage projects with original ideas. Today we are glad to invite Harry as our guest to talk about his project Magicave. Hi Harry, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. Well, let's just get started. Could you briefly introduce your project a little bit?
Sure. So we are Magicave. We're a games and digital collectibles company. And our first project is called D Number or Dino, and it centers around the creation of beautiful digital collectible dice, the kind of dice that you might play a game like Dungeons and Dragons or Warhammer with. But you use those dice to create characters. The dice are themed. You might have wizard themed dice or barbarian themed dice, and you combine these unique dice together to make characters. And you then use those characters to play certain games that we're creating and that our community is creating. So it's kind of building like a virtual hobby, starting with dice, but then moving on to characters, building worlds out of what we call D number tiles. Tiles are hexagonal pieces that build up game worlds. And so the first game that we're releasing is currently codenamed HexGen, and it's like a roguelike turn-based multiplayer kind of dungeon crawling game where you're going into dungeons, you're fighting monsters, you're collecting loot. But much more than that is about sort of building D number into a hobby. So you create you might collect the dice and you create a character from the dice. If you really like that character, you might choose to mint that character as an NFT. If you do that, the character then has a life of its own. It exists outside of our ecosystem. You can take it into other metaverses. You can decorate it. You could get someone else to decorate it. You could buy tiles and you could build worlds out of those tiles, or you could just play the procedurally generated worlds that we create out of those tiles. And we're also making available SDKs to other developers so they can access all of our collectibles, all of our tech, all of our all of the items that make up that D number universe, so that people can use those in their own games too.
Okay. Yeah, great. It's just so much fun to say that you combine such a traditional thing, like the dice toys is something like really from the past and from our childhood, and combine them with the latest, like such a new technology, the blockchain stuff. But your dice is like a little bit different with the dice like we usually play. You have more characters or some more features. Is that so?
Yeah, so the first thing we'll do is drop these dice in themed sets. So in a set of dice, you get 7 different dice: a 4-sided dice, a 6-sided dice, an 8-sided dice. But they all look completely unique, and they might be made of different materials. They might have different objects inside them. They might be really worn. They might have different fonts, all kinds of different traits that the dice have. And the traits of those dice, when you combine them together, then create a unique character for you. So let's say I bought a wizard set of dice. I mean, if I drag those into our character creator, it's just going to create one wizard character. But if I change one of those dice for maybe a barbarian dice or a different wizard dice, it's going to create a completely different character. So I might have a wizard with a magic wand and a wizard's hat and magical powers. But if I drag some barbarian dice into him, maybe he's got a sword and maybe he's stronger and maybe his magical abilities are changed. And so by combining thousands of sets of different dice in the world, or even millions of sets of different dice in the world, that allows us to create millions of different characters. And then, yeah, you play those characters, and you'll choose what character you want to play depending on what is the mission that you're going on, what is the treasure you want to find, what are the baddies you're going to encounter in the dungeons you venture into. And so what we want to do is create an ecosystem where, a little bit like these games like Dungeons and Dragons or Warhammer, people get different things out of that hobby depending on what they are. So some people might really like this game or that game. Some people will just want to collect the dice because they're beautiful things, and we already have started to build kind of a community of dice enthusiasts and real world physical dice creators that just love dice, right? But other people might really be into the creation of characters, or maybe the decorating of characters. So think about like the decorating plastic miniatures that people play war games with. So you'll be able to do those kind of things. You'll be able to build your own worlds. And then eventually we will launch a thing called D Number Stories, which is where the worlds and the characters have their own history, and everything that they do every battle that they fight, every piece of treasure, every weapon they collect, every spell they learn, all of that stuff is then backed up on a blockchain, and people are able to sort of, the characters and the worlds become more and more unique to you over time as you've kind of played this character and you've kind of created these worlds.
Yeah, it's like you use the dice to create so much randomness to make the game more joyful. But I mean, in the normal games, you need to preset some stories, some characters. But in the dice, because everybody can create their own one, will there be like too many randomness? You can't control like something gonna happen just in the metaverse, and so maybe the result will be totally different. Is that so?
Yeah, so we need to be very aware of what traits it is that we build into the dice and into the characters, and make sure, we don't want to be creating a useless character, right? Or we don't want to we don't want to make a set of dice that looks terrible. So a lot of the work that we've done over the last year is in building kind of procedural generation technology. So our artists and our programmers work very closely together, so we can generate lots and lots of different dice, and we can say, okay, we want the dice to have this kind of theme and have this kind of effect on the game. But at the same time, we can do that at scale. So one of the things that we think about the blockchain game business so far is, although there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of money being thrown at it, compared to the sort of traditional video game business, it's very small number of players. Even the big games maybe have thousands or tens of thousands of players that are paying to engage in the games. And the video game business is used to dealing with millions or even tens of millions of players, or even billions of players in the case of some mobile games. And so it was very important to us as kind of, at our heart, we're not crypto people, we're games people. So we've kind of come at this really not knowing that much a couple of years ago about the crypto business, about NFTs, and we've been on this journey of learning a lot of that stuff. But what we do know about is how to make games. I've been doing that for 30 years. And so, but kind of with that comes the idea that we need to, and the blockchain game business generally needs to have millions of players in the future. Even the last mobile game I released sold 5 million copies, right? There's no blockchain game in the world that has 5 million players. And so it's just super important that we're able to do these things at scale. And that's why a lot of the tech that we're building and have built is all about kind of making beautiful, unique items that are personal to you and that you can evolve over time to become even more personal and special to you, but that we can do for millions of players, not, a 10,000 NFT drop or something like that, which isn't really very interesting in the grand scheme of things.
Great. And speaking of your background, could you give us a brief introduction about your team? And also, how did you guys come up with the idea to create this project?
Sure. So, well, my background is about 30 years ago, I started working as a game programmer, made games for people like Electronic Arts. And I worked at Sony when we were first launching the first PlayStation. And I had a studio in the 1990s that I founded, and we took that to an IPO, did a lot of stuff around kind of early internet gaming, that kind of thing. And then for the last 20 years or so, I've just been working with a bunch of different companies, producing various games, helping other people produce games. One of the things I did fairly recently, a few years ago now, was me and a friend wrote the mobile version of a game called Stardew Valley, which was a very popular PC game that we took over to mobile. And so that's my background. And one of the companies that I founded was called The Secret Police. Is called The Secret Police. And that company, my lead programmer there, Ed Thorley, he joined me to create Magicave, along with our third co-founder, who's called Steve Curran. And Steve, both of those guys I've known for a very long time. Steve is a game designer. Ed is a great kind of technology guy. And we came together just over a year ago to really, we just wanted to investigate the blockchain. We looked at it from outside, and we kind of felt there was something interesting there. We felt that there was a lot of stuff people were doing that we felt wasn't really necessarily in the right direction. A lot of people, I think, are looking at games as being the next big thing on the blockchain, without realizing just how hard it is to make games. Making games that people want to play is really hard. And I've been doing it for 30 years and I get it wrong much more often than I get it right. And so does everybody else. So we were kind of looking at that, thinking maybe some people are, some of the game projects we weren't very enthusiastic about. But more than that, we just wanted to learn, so we know games, we didn't know blockchain. So we just wanted to create a team that was able to start experimenting and do some cool stuff. And this kind of led to the idea of virtual collectibles, being something about being on a blockchain, we felt made objects feel more real, right? And I think one of the things as a game designer that we do all the time is we pretend to players that something is real, right? So when you're driving a car in a racing game and you hit the side of the track, we make the screen shake, and you haven't really made the screen shake. We've just tricked you into thinking it's more real than it really is. But that feeling of things being real is really important in games, making things tactile and nice to touch. And we felt that the idea that you can own something and it exists outside of our game, outside of our ecosystem, is really interesting in terms of making people value those things and making them care about them and making them care about what happens to them in games. So we kind of started from that idea, and we were thinking, okay, well, what can we do that is a small step that allows us to learn something, and maybe we're right and maybe we're wrong, but we'll learn something and then we'll do the next thing and then we'll do the next thing. Because I think at the moment, the question, what is a blockchain game? Nobody really knows this yet. I think, there is no long-term successful blockchain game yet. And I think we all in the industry have different ideas about what that might be. And we all have this vision of what the market might be like in a few years' time. But we're not there yet. And we're a long way from there because the number of players is tiny. So we felt, rather than trying to make a great big, AAA game from the beginning, or kind of take an existing game type and put some NFTs or put a cryptocurrency in it, we wanted to just step back from all of that and just think, what does it allow us to do as game designers? So this idea that I can take a dice or a character out of my game and put it on a marketplace, that's quite interesting. The idea that maybe I can give it to someone else and they can modify it. Modding is a big part of the PC game scene, and I think what we're about is kind of taking that a little bit further with the idea of virtual ownership of digital goods, allowing people to trade, allowing people to play, creating communities around these virtual collectibles, not just playing our games, but actually developing their own games, changing our games. If they like what we're doing, that's great. If they don't, well, they can make something else with these dice or with these characters. They can build their own worlds, or they can build their own world creator, or they can do whatever they want. And we kind of see, after a lot of that, we kind of started to see it a little bit more like something like Lego. We're more about building toys that people can do whatever they want with. If I buy a Lego set, some people just want to build the thing that is on the picture of the box, the Star Wars spaceship or the Indiana Jones world or something like that that's on the box. But other people want to take the Lego set apart and combine it with other things and make something unique that's theirs. And I think it's when you get those communities together, the amount of creativity, the amount of surprises that come out of that can be huge. And we've seen that with things like Stardew Valley. That was a game with a lot of modding in it, but also things like Minecraft, Lego itself. But the more that you can make the tools available to everybody, I think that the better. And as someone who is a game designer, a game programmer, I always find if I'm sat there on my own trying to design a game, maybe I'll have a good idea, maybe I won't. But when I'm working with someone else, well, we're much better together than we were individually. And then when we hired a team, and we've built now a team of about 15 people working on this project, again, new ideas come from that team that I would never have had, or my co-founders would never have had. And so that creativity and the things that you can achieve go up again. But if we take that, our little team of 15 people, and we combine it with a community of 100,000 people, all of a sudden that's 100,000 brains thinking about what can we do with these items, and so it just changes everything. I think it just means so many more things will happen with our virtual objects, with our collectibles in our environment that we haven't thought of yet. And I think that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, there are two things I really like about your project. Is first is your background from the traditional game. You were talking that nobody knows what a successful blockchain game gonna look like. I was thinking about this problem like recently. I think it's because we add too much blockchain stuff in the game. At now, you add NFT, you add token, and some people are more focused on the play to earn part. It's like when you focus on the earning part or something like that in the game, because if you play a game, it does not create too much value. In the DeFi world, when you deposit your currency, you create the liquidity. But if you play a game, it's more for your fun. If it's for your good, yeah, it's for your well-being. If you focus on like trying to earn something from the game, I think it might not be successful. So that's what I'm thinking. Recently, I've been looking at the project. I think those projects which is really focused on the playful side of the game, who make people like really enjoy the game, maybe will win at the end. Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
I think you're absolutely right. Sorry, I think the play to earn, I think, is really interesting, and I think what I haven't liked about things I've seen so far is, not everybody can earn, right? And our view is, if you've got a healthy kind of hobby game ecosystem, then maybe if I'm adding value to that ecosystem, then maybe I can earn. So in the same way that if I make some mods to some games and I sell those on Steam, I can earn from that.
yeah.
But I need players that are paying in order for that ecosystem to be sustainable. We can't all take money out.
Exactly.
Some people have to but most people have to be putting money in. And I think at the same time, I think a lot of the DeFi stuff is really interesting, and I think that it does have a role to play in facilitating those ecosystems where some people are able to earn, but it's not all of it. And I think what happened early is, and maybe we saw this a little bit with some of the ICOs sort of 5-6 years ago as well. Everybody was creating their own currency, and I remember kind of at the time thinking, well, we don't need all of these currencies. There's my worry was really that for a lot of projects, it seems like really a lot of the project is about kind of creating a narrative that is there to tell people that whatever asset is created is going to go up in value. And for us, it's more about, can we create a hobby? Can we create some things that people enjoy? And I think people are starting to realize that. We're seeing a lot more talk about utility of NFTs, but I still think people underestimate how difficult making a game that people want to play is. And I see a lot of pitches for sort of blockchain game related things, and a lot of the time people have got really interesting ideas, but there does seem to be a lot of the time this assumption that your tokenomics slide is the most important thing, and your distribution, and that stuff to me is very secondary. The most important thing is, are you making something people are going to enjoy? Are you making something people are going to enjoy for the long term? And it's really hard. And a lot of companies that we see, it's almost like they want to subcontract the game making part out and focus on the DeFi part. But actually, the game making part is extremely hard. The vast majority of games that people make don't succeed. And so trying to create a play to earn kind of game, or any kind of sort of Web3 game, without getting that right first, that fun element, I think is only ever going to have a very small audience, and it's going to have a very small audience that's mostly interested in the speculation around the assets. And I think that's perfectly valid. I think there will be some projects that work very well on that basis, but I think if you want to expand beyond a fairly small audience, then I think you really need to get the game part of it right, and it's super hard to do that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and I was talking about the first stuff, and the second thing I like about your project is you are trying to, you know how important the community is, so you are trying to let more of them to participate. Yeah, I think that is also very good for your ecology as well. But anyway, we're gonna talk about this part later on. Let's move on our next question. And so how is your project development now, and what's your plan like in the near future?
Mm-hmm. So we raised some money a couple of months ago from some great investors led by Fabric and Bitcraft, who are two of the sort of smartest investors out there. So that's allowed us to scale up a little bit. And so what we're doing, the first thing we'll do is is start to drop these sets of dice. We don't quite know when we're going to do that yet. We're keeping an eye on a few things. Partly we're keeping an eye on the market itself, because obviously it's taken a bit of a dip. We're also interested in which blockchain should these things sit on. I'm very interested to see what happens to Ethereum after the merge that's happening this month. My feeling is that's going to be a very positive move for that. So anyway, the first thing that we're doing is dropping these dice. We could do that now. At the moment, we're holding off because partly because of just wanting to learn a little bit more about the market, but also wanting to get the games to be as good as they can be. They're going to be very early when we launch. So when we launch the dice, we're going to put out 3 different applications. One of them is it's just called D-Roller, and it's just a really simple application where you can get your dice and you can roll them. So if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons online, which most people now do, you can use your Dino dice, your collectible dice, to do that with, and you can put yourself on a green screen over the roller. And it's just a little fun application that gives you something to do. We've got a second game called Dice Goblins, which is a kind of card battle game where you use the dice. It's a little bit of sort of poker rules with card battle together. And we created that just to experiment with certain game mechanics about combat to see what players think of it. And so we're going to put out a very early version of that just to see, does anyone like this kind of combat, or do they not like this kind of combat? And then the third one is this game that's currently called HexGen, which is the core of our game development focus at the moment. And that is this roguelike game. And when we say roguelike, we mean very much like the original game Rogue, but 3D, very beautiful. You're going around this hex-based environment, using your characters, collecting treasure, opening doors. It's shaping up to be a really good game. Earlier this year, we built a 2D prototype of that, just with really simple kind of pixel art, and tested out the gameplay of that, and we really enjoyed it. So now we're taking that game into 3D. We're now building out the technology that procedurally generates the worlds. So we can already procedurally generate the dice. We can now procedurally generate the worlds. We're getting close to finishing our procedural generation of the characters as well. And I think once we've got all of those things ready in a very early form, then we'll release the very first playable version of HexGen. And around that time, we'll probably launch the first dice so that people can, we may only launch 100 sets. We're not trying to, we don't want to launch huge numbers of things and raise millions of dollars and then, not have anything for people to do with them. So this is why we did some venture capital fundraising instead of sort of launching a bunch of NFTs. I think if we do a big launch, then there's always the danger that you launch something and then without enough for people to do with it, the interest and the value in those things goes down. And we see that a lot with, whether it's currencies being issued or NFT drops. They sound really exciting at the beginning, but actually people eventually are like, well, what's it for? And we don't want to find ourselves in that situation. So our focus was very much on, let's stay away from that for the moment. We want to, when we launch something, we want it to be with a very clear roadmap so that people are going to have fun from the first day.
Yeah, very clear roadmap. But just a little question is for myself. I'm not sure if I got this correctly because I saw on your Twitter page you have like so many real dice that is made by community, kind of that. But all your dice is it was designed on chain first, right? And then people can take those data to create the real dice. How is the relation?
So the dice, yeah, they're pretty much every dice that we will have tweeted has been. Well, if we've tweeted it rather than retweeted, they're digital dice, so they're not real.
Okay.
So they are. We've built this technology called Degenerate that allows us to output procedurally these beautiful sets of dice with different materials and different items inside and that kind of thing. So those dice will, when they're launched, they will exist on a blockchain, and then you can use those dice in our games, and you don't have to buy any of our dice to play the game. So you'll always be able to play all of our games with a free set of dice if you want, but that won't give you access to lots of different characters. owning some dice will make your experience that much richer. So we hope that people will want to buy the dice. And I mean, so for example, what someone might do, let's say we do a drop of dice, and we drop 1,000 sets of wizard dice, for example. So if you own one of those sets, you can create a wizard character, and that character will be unique because your dice are unique. If you want to then bring in some barbarian dice, you'll make it, as I said, more like a wizard fighter character with a sword instead of a magic wand. And if you want to mint that character, that then can have its own life on the blockchain as well. And if you wanted to, you could sell that character, or you could sell the dice because you don't need the dice anymore. What we want is for people to be not necessarily, just holding these dice and hoping they go up in value. We want them to be playing with them and trading them with other people, because it's by owning lots and lots of different sets of dice over time that you can create more variety of characters and more variety of worlds. So for us, it's less about, we're creating these things that people hope are going to go up in value. Maybe they will, but that's not the point. The point is to play with them. And to have an ecosystem of trading, of creation, and of playing, all centered around our Discord server, where our games report into and have leaderboards and community events and that kind of thing.
Okay, but when you say buy the dice, it's like they buy the virtual thing, the digital stuff, right? And all those playing or the gaming is online. The goods is just an extra, like for people can feel it.
Well, so at the moment we don't have a plan for any physical dice. I think some people have thought our dice are real. They're not real. We are working with some people who do make real collectible dice, like physical dice, and we will probably bring some of their designs into the digital realm as well. And maybe we'll go the other way around. So maybe we will create some physical dice. But no, everything we're doing basically is about digital objects, not physical objects.
Oh yeah, great. No, because sometimes it confuses me, because I saw like so many real stuff on your Twitter, because this looks so real. I saw you take a picture or something. No, it's just
they look pretty good. Yeah.
It looks so real. I thought you designed the virtual one, and you based on this data you create the real one. That's what I thought. Okay, great. Like something like confused.
That might be something. I think it's a great idea. We'd love to do that in the future. But yeah.
Yeah, maybe someone, if they have like some 3D printer, they can print by their own.
Yeah, I mean, we've been fascinated to know, because I used to play a lot of these kind of games when I was younger, but sort of now some of the people that work with us are huge collectors of physical, real dice, and it's been really interesting just to learn about that world, and the passion and the creativity that artisan dice makers use when they're making these beautiful items. So yeah, there's a whole world out there that we didn't know existed a couple of years ago.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to the last question. How can the community members participate in your current development, like designing dice or just join the group? Yeah, any activities they can contribute, or anyone.
Yeah. So I mean, we're very early at the moment. So at the moment, we haven't released our games publicly yet. But what we do is pretty much the whole development process is in public on our Discord server, which you can get to via magicave.io. If you go to magicave.io, you can link to our Discord server there. Anyone is welcome to join. And yeah, I mean, at the moment, we haven't really done a lot of outreach to the blockchain community. We don't think it's necessary yet. We're more interested in finding people that are just interested in the games, in the hobby, that side of things. There's a few people in there that are sort of potentially NFT collectors too, and that's great. But yeah, so when we do launch the games, and certainly when we do the first NFT drops, we'll probably do a test drop of maybe 100 sets of dice, as I said. Those will exclusively go to people that are on the Discord. And yeah, so as we progress, we'll make the games available to people. People will be able to compete with each other online. So for example, with HexGen, there'll be a dungeon of the day, and everyone can compete to play that dungeon, and there'll be one winner, and there'll be kind of prizes that those winners will get. But really, we want people to join and learn with us and give us that input. So, the reason we're doing everything in public is because we don't know what a blockchain game is yet. and we hope that we can discover it, and we hope the community can help us. And probably around the same time as we make the first games and the first drops available, we'll also release our Unity SDK. So we have an SDK that you can use to bring all of the D number collectibles into your game. So if you're making a game in Unity, and we'll support Unreal before too long as well, but you can build games with our, for our players. You can change our games, you can build your own things, and people are starting to do that already, which is really exciting. We're going to want some test players. We're going to want people that are interested in dice. If people are interested in games like Warhammer or Dungeons and Dragons, maybe they like painting the figures, maybe they collect dice, maybe they just want to play some cool games. Maybe they just want somewhere to hang out, and maybe they're interested in cryptocurrencies and NFTs. But we'd love to build a community that's combining all of those things together. It's not just about buy this thing and we're all going to go to the moon. We want to create a real hobby that people are going to be playing in 10 years' time. That's the goal.
Okay. Yeah, okay, great. I think that's all for us today. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. And for those who are interested in Magicave, in the number, yeah, I will put all those links in the description.
Wonderful. Well, lovely to meet you, and thank you very much for having me on.
You too. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.